do an English degree. Phil attended Liverpool, again to read English, while Ed studied politics at Manchester. Tom decided that he would take a year out and got a job selling men's suits, a position to which he showed little aptitude. Tom finally went to Exeter University to study fine art and literature, but before this he worked as an orderly in a mental hospital. This experience is said to have provided the inspiration for the menacing track Climbing Up the Walls. University life wasn't of great interest to the young singer. He was both disinterested in the merits of academia and embarrassed by the predictable antics of his fellow students. Instead, he sought to satisfy his creative needs by embracing the blossoming techno and house scene that was sweeping the nation's clubs and parties. Before long, he was a regular DJ and even joined a techno band called Flicker Noise. Despite all the other members playing in university bands, the continuance of On a Friday always remained the top priority. Following completion of their respective degrees, the five were happy to once again get down to the serious business of signing a record deal. It seemed that now, with the explosion of other bands in the Thames Valley area such as Ride, musical success was a more realistic prospect than it had ever been before. However, things weren't quite so straightforward for one of the group. Johnny had been at Oxford Polytechnic just 3 months when the band told him that they would need a full-time commitment from him. Following advice from a college tutor, he put his education on hold and moved into a semi-detached house near the centre of Oxford to be with the rest of the band. It turned out that the five were not quite as compatible as they had once thought. The house soon became a pit of cigarette ash and dirty dishes, with its occupants doing their very best to avoid each other. However, despite this awkward period, they retained their common focus and were soon to be rewarded with their first break. Chris Hufford and Bryce Edge had both enjoyed modest success in the pop groups Air FX and New Romantics during the 80s. Following the demise of their respective bands, the pair went into business, opening up the Courtyard studio complex in Sutton Courtenay. The studio struggled to make enough money, and before long Hufford and Bryce were looking at other ways to supplement their income. So they set up a production company geared towards capitalising on the wealth of local talent. In late 1990, a demo tape came into their possession by a band called On a Friday. Hufford listened intently, and although he liked what he heard, he felt the songs lacked identity. Nonetheless, he instructed his staff to ensure any other material by this band should come straight to him. Sure enough, 6 months later, another demo arrived, and this time the tracks were far more refined. One song of particular interest bore the intriguing title, Stop Whispering. Meanwhile, the five had been gigging whenever and wherever they could. They had performed over 100 times during the last year, but were still struggling to gain any sort of recognition. After hearing the Stop Whispering tape, Chris Hufford decided it was time to go and see them live. The next gig was at the infamous Jericho Tavern, a venue that previously provided a platform from which bands such as Ride and Slow Drive had launched their careers. That night, On a Friday, played with their usual eccentric passion. Tom's vocals ranged from screams to whispers, while the 3 guitars bombarded the audience with bizarre melodies and effects. When they returned backstage, they were greeted by an ecstatic Hufford, pleading for the chance to work with them. They listened to what he had to say, and were more than happy to record their next demo at Courtyard Studios.
We weren't happy with the name On a Friday, and I think Radiohead is a song by Talking Heads on True Stories, and it was kind of like they were probably actually one of the few bands that we all really liked.
It was to be Colin's part-time job in the local R Price that would help On a Friday onto the next rung of the ladder. He knew that one of the reps, Keith Wozencroft, would visit the store with the latest releases worked for EMI. Colin also knew that this same rep would soon be on his way to work for Parlophone in the A&R department, so if he was going to offer him the band's latest demo, it had to be now or never. So the next time Wozencroft entered the store, Colin forced upon him the Manic Hedgehog tape, recently recorded at Courtyard Studios. The bassist insisted that he should sign his band, or at least come to their next gig. Having listened to the tape, Wozencroft turned up at an open-air outing, where he found On a Friday playing to a few friends in a tent. Despite the poor attendance, he was suitably impressed with the band's performance, and subsequently left a message saying he would be in touch. Wozencroft moved on to his new post at Parlophone, and immediately set about pursuing On a Friday. Once again they were due to play at the Jericho Tavern, but this time, to his amazement, he was in the company of around 20 other record scouts. In between gigs, the band had been working tirelessly on developing new material, and evidence of their dedication was there for all to see. Wozencroft knew that he needed to secure their signatures, and fast. So it was that on the 21st of December 1991, On a Friday signed an 8-album deal with Parlophone Records. On sealing the contract, it was apparent that one thing would have to change, and that thing was their name. The moniker Radiohead was taken from a track on the Talking Heads' True Stories album. With connotations alluding to the technological age, this appellation seems to have grown with the band and their music. To this day, they still feel as if they have been blessed with a name that conjures a progressive image, rather than the aimless monosyllabic titles assumed by so many bands of the era. Radiohead's first official release was the Drill EP. Produced by Hufford and Bryce, it provided an insight, albeit a tentative one, into the future potential of the band. The EP's opening track, Prove Yourself, became a firm favourite with BBC Radio 1 DJ Gary Davis, who played the track regularly on his show. Clearly he didn't regard the chorus line, "I'm better off dead," as too sombre for his mainstream listeners. Others, however, were quick to start focusing on Radiohead's brooding attitude rather than the quality of their music. During 1992, the band embarked upon their first official national tour, supporting the likes of Catherine Wheel and Sultans of Ping FC. Unfortunately, due to an almost non-existent following and improper funding, these were not particularly happy times. Nonetheless, the group were optimistic about their next studio recording, especially as they were due to be working with the experienced American production duo Sean Slade and Paul Q. Calderi. Before recording commenced, the production team insisted on sitting in on a rehearsal. But when the band played their latest tracks, Slade and Calderi couldn't disguise their disappointment. They felt the quality of the new songs didn't match those they had previously heard. That was until the frustrated band crashed into what Tom described as their Scott Walker number. Sean and Paul were immediately grabbed by the tune, but misinterpreted Tom's statement and believed the song to be a cover. That song was called Creep, and little did Radiohead know, but they were about to record a song that would have a lasting impact on their career. However, not all of the band felt that the track was as strong as Calderi and Slade made out. Johnny in particular felt something was missing, so when it came to recording, he protested by grinding a deadened chord twice just before the first chorus. It worked beautifully, and the band just played on. An act of petulance had provided Creep with a moment of brilliance. Released in September 1992, the Creep EP was Radiohead's strongest effort